Welcome to this explainer. You know that feeling when your alarm goes off in the morning and you just feel this deep, heavy sense of existential dread? Well, today we're unpacking a highly provocative theory that suggests your daily schedule isn't just some harmless routine. The source material we're looking at makes a really bold claim. It says the modern schedule is actually an illusion, a carefully constructed grid designed to keep you predictable and, above all, exhausted. We're going to dive right into how this fascinating argument is built and why it suggests the way we track our days is fundamentally working against our natural state.
Think about it for a second. Most of us wake up to that alarm, rush to a desk, and sell off our life force in these neat 8-hour blocks, just assuming, hey, this is how the world works. But the author asks us to question that completely. What if it isn't a natural career path at all? What if it's an artificial grid forced onto us? The text goes as far as asking us to look at our jobs not as opportunities, but as a literal military occupation of our souls. It's a really heavy concept, right? Framing our entire modern existence as a state of capture rather than a state of actual freedom.
And this completely redefines how we look at modern burnout. We hear about burnout absolutely all the time, but this theory argues that chronic systemic exhaustion doesn't just happen because you're working hard. No, the claim is that you're tired because your biological hardware is being forced to run on an artificial Roman grid, basically a system of timekeeping that was never ever designed for human freedom or biological well-being. The text points to a massive mismatch between the organic machine of the human body and the mechanical, rigid demands of modern society.
So, how did we get here? To understand how we allegedly got trapped, the explainer traces this back chronologically. Millennia ago, ancient civilizations supposedly used lunar technologies and rituals to regulate their energy. But then, ancient Rome established a new grid, the calendarian. And this wasn't about tracking seasons, it was essentially a debt-tracking system. Fast forward to 1946, and the source claims these ancient lunar rhythms were systematically buried by power structures. Why? Because living by them makes a population ungovernable. Which leads us straight to today, where the 40-hour workweek functions as a mechanism to just continuously harvest human energy.
To really grasp the architecture of this alleged time prison, the author invites us to look at something we use every single day: our words. Language totally shapes our reality, and the vocabulary we use around work actually forms the invisible bars of our cage, according to the text. It calls this the vocabulary of occupation. Let's break down some of these everyday, totally normal terms to see what the source says they actually mean.
Let's start with a classic, a word you probably drop at every dinner party: your occupation. When someone asks what you do, you name your job. But the author wants us to consider the literal definition of occupation: to seize a territory by force and hold it. The argument here is that when you call your job an occupation, you're subconsciously acknowledging that your time and your energy form an occupied territory, one that's been seized and held by this artificial time grid.
Oh, and it gets deeper. Think about the word employment. The text traces this back to the root player, which literally translates to being folded or woven into a machine. The implication here is honestly pretty wild. You aren't just going to work. You are literally being woven into a larger systemic machine. Your life is being chopped up into mechanical hours and sold off as a commodity. According to this theory, you're a cog, woven right into the fabric of that 40-hour grid.
Even our daily goals are framed by fear in this vocabulary. Take the word deadline. We use it super casually, right? Hey, I've got a deadline on Friday, but it literally translates to a line of death. The author points out how this enforces a constant, underlying panic of running out of time. A deadline is the exact point where your time expires and consequences hit if the system's artificial needs aren't met. It's totally a language of survival and compliance.
And finally, we have the calendar itself. Derived from the Latin calendari, the source exposes this not as some harmless scientific measure of time, but as a rigid debt-tracking system. It was used by Roman emperors specifically to mark the exact day when interest and debts were due. It's pretty crazy to think about, right? The text suggests that every single time you stress over a blocked-off calendar, you're actually aligning yourself with the tool designed for financial collection, not natural human rhythms.
Which brings us to a really stark contrast that is central to this whole manifesto. On one side, we have cyclical time. This is based on lunar rhythms, natural seasons, the life cycle, things where everything returns and regenerates. But on the other side, humanity was forced into linear time, the Roman grid. It's a debt cycle that creates that grinding fear of running out of time we were just talking about. The theory argues that moving humanity from cyclical to linear time was basically a deliberate mechanism of control.
Okay, so we've looked at history and language, but now the explainer shifts gears to biology, and this is fascinating. The theory proposes that your body functions essentially as a biological quantum computer, and as a biological quantum computer, your system just does not recognize the Roman clock ticking on your office wall. It operates on entirely different, much older, much more natural frequencies. So, what exactly happens when a biological computer is forced to run on mechanical software?
To really wrap our heads around this, the author gives us a key number: 70%. Because you are composed of roughly 70% water, the argument is that your cells are deeply, inextricably sensitive to natural frequencies in your environment. Water responds to gravitational and electromagnetic pulls, so your body is biologically attuned to the natural world, absolutely not the artificial construct of a 9-to-5 schedule.
And this ties that 70% directly back to the cosmos. The text has this incredible quote: "The moon isn't just a rock in the sky. It is a frequency transmitter that governs the water in your body. Your cells are literally reorganizing around its phases every single night." The source posits that your nervous system acts like a third brain. When you force this highly sensitive biological equipment to work a static 40-hour week, completely ignoring whether the moon is new or full, you are creating permanent, exhausting biological dissonance.
But don't worry, we aren't just left with the problem. To escape this mechanical time prison, the author outlines a highly specific solution called the 28-day lunar protocol. And this isn't just about tweaking your planner. The text presents this as a profound method for reclaiming your creative authority and syncing back up with the natural cycles that actually fuel human biology.
So how does it work? The protocol has a few core components. First up is time fasting, which means deliberately disconnecting from clock-based tracking to break the grid's hold on your mind. Next is natural rhythm attunement. This means actively syncing your nervous system with that 28-day lunar cycle. The theory claims that by doing this, you can literally stop the system from harvesting your energy. You reclaim your high-vibration energy for your own life, making yourself completely ungovernable to the artificial grid.
In practice, these actions tie directly to specific lunar phases. Step 1 happens during the new moon. The author describes this as a time of superposition, where all possibilities are open, basically the perfect time for scripting and planning out your reality. Then, Step 2 hits right at the full moon. The text states this is the peak of electromagnetic field strength, the exact moment you should be utilizing your energy to collapse those possibilities into actual manifestations.
But here is where the author contends the modern workweek actively sabotages this natural process. During the new moon, when you should be out there scripting reality, the grid demands you be busy at the office. Why? Because the busy mind is blocked from questioning the cage. Then, during the full moon, when your energy is supposedly at its absolute peak, the grid requires you to stay employed. The claim is that the system purposely extracts this peak, high-vibration energy for its own use, instead of letting you use it to empower your own life.
So, what does this all mean for us? As we conclude this explainer on the lunar protocol and the theory of the artificial time grid, we want to leave you with the manifesto's ultimate unsettling question. Are you serving a life cycle or a debt cycle? It's a pretty powerful thought to chew on the next time your morning alarm rings, right? Are you moving to the rhythm of your own biological nature, or are you just marching to the beat of a Roman clock designed to harvest your time? Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll see you in the next explainer